His breath was still hot on my collarbone when he whispered, "I waited every night, even when you hated me." My fingers dug into his back. I wanted to hate him. I really did. But my body remembered what my heart tried to forget. If you want to know why I let him in, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Some stories don't begin at the beginning. They begin the night everything breaks. It didn't feel like a deal with the devil. There was no thunderstorm, no smoke curling from under the mahogany table, just polished shoes on polished floors and a pen that cost more than my entire college tuition. He didn't look at me. Not really. His eyes skimmed past mine as if I were an intern who'd overstayed her welcome. The papers were already laid out. The silver pen clicked open with a clean, final sound. And then his voice, quiet, measured, American Northeast clipped, spoke from the far end of the room. "The agreement is for 12 months. You'll live at my residence. You'll accompany me to events when required. You will not interfere with business matters. You will not ask questions. In return, all debts under your family name will be cleared by tomorrow morning." It didn't feel like being owned. Not yet. But the silence afterward, that long stretched silence while I held the pen and stared at the empty signature line, was what told me something inside me was about to break. I signed anyway. Not because I was brave, because the mortgage was 3 months past due, because my father had lost everything to a lawsuit I still didn't fully understand, because my mother had that look in her eyes, the one that said she didn't know how to breathe anymore, because Liam Cade had been the only one who didn't slam the door. His penthouse wasn't a home. It was a fortress made of glass and marble. Impeccably decorated, painfully cold. There was no clutter, no warmth, just lines, sharp ones, running along the floorboards, the granite countertops, the way his spine stayed rigid when he passed me in the hallway. Always dressed in black or slate gray, always looking at something just past me. We never touched. The first night, I slept in the guest wing. My room was too big, the bed too pristine, and the silence too loud. In the morning, there was a cup of tea waiting outside my door. Chamomile. No note. No knock. That became routine. He never commented on what I wore, never corrected my posture, never told me how to speak, how to smile, how to behave around his colleagues. But I always knew when he was watching, like his eyes were walls made of frost glass, thin enough to let in light, thick enough to block meaning. The press never knew who I was. In public, I was introduced as a friend when I was introduced at all. At a charity gala in Midtown, I stood next to him in a navy satin dress he hadn't seen me put on. He gave a speech about innovation and resilience. I clapped. He didn't. Look at me once. Afterward, he left in a Blacktown car. I took the second one home alone. Sometimes I would catch glimpses, flashes of something real beneath the armor. He would come home late, loosen his tie, pour himself a drink, and just stand by the window for 10-15 minutes, not moving, not blinking, as if searching for something out there in the city lights he couldn't quite reach. And every night, no matter what time he returned, I'd find that same cup of tea outside my door. Still warm. I should have hated him. I tried to. But hate requires heat. And Liam Cade was made of winter. There were no cruel words. No touches that lingered too long. Nothing overtly wrong. It was the absence that got to me. The absence of laughter, of conversation, of being seen. He was always composed, always 10 steps ahead. And the strange part? He never asked for more, never tried to sleep with me, never even implied it, as if I were something ornamental, as if I were already fading. One night, 3 months in, I asked him quietly after dinner, "Why me?" He looked at me then. Fully. His eyes were the color of storm glass, gray, unreadable, waiting to break. You were available. That was all. He said it like he was ordering a drink. Like I had been a number on a list, and he simply chose the quietest one. I didn't cry. Not in front of him. I went back to my room, locked the door, and tried not to scream. It was raining the night of the Dwelton Foundation's annual fundraiser. The ballroom shimmered in gold and green, chandeliers, dripping crystals like tears. I stood 2 steps behind him, in a floor-length emerald gown I hadn't chosen. My name wasn't on the guest list. I smiled when he smiled, nodded when he nodded. But I could feel myself blurring at the edges. Then I saw her. A tall woman in red, elegant, sharp, familiar with him. He took her hand, leaned in, said something that made her laugh, and then he left, with her. Didn't look back. Didn't say goodnight. Just walked out of that ballroom like I wasn't real. On the ride home, I stared out the window of the car. The city glowed in its usual, disinterested brilliance. I could see my own reflection in the glass. Lipstick still perfect. Hair still pinned, expression blank. I had signed away 12 months of my life. I had thought I was doing it to save someone. But maybe I'd done it just to see what it felt like to disappear. I made myself tea that night. When I opened my door the next morning, the usual cup was there. Still warm, still silent, still him. And for the first time, I hated how much that mattered. 3 months. That's how long I'd been living in his world of polished silence and curated detachment. It was a world of shadows disguised as structure. His driver always on time, his calendar managed down to the minute, his words trimmed of anything that might resemble emotion. Liam Cade didn't speak more than he had to. He didn't smile unless it served a purpose. And he never, not once, asked me how I was doing. And yet, there were moments, slivers, things I shouldn't have noticed. A new set of drawing pencils delivered to my room the day after I'd idly sketched something on a napkin. A blanket folded neatly at the foot of the couch on nights he knew I'd fall asleep reading. Once, I dropped a glass, and before I could bend to pick up the shards, he was already holding out a towel, not looking at me, just handing it over like muscle memory. I told myself he cared, in some cold, broken Liam Cade kind of way. That was my mistake. The night everything cracked open started like most others. I was dressed in a navy sheath dress, heels slightly too high for my comfort. We were attending a private investor event at a rooftop bar in Tribeca. The view was stunning. The crowd wasn't. Everyone was polished, hungry, and loud in the way only rich people could be, confidence masquerading as character. Liam stood with a group of men near the bar. I lingered a few feet behind, a glass of untouched champagne in hand. My job was simple. Look elegant, stay quiet, don't embarrass him. He never said those words. He didn't have to. That's when I heard it. I wasn't eavesdropping. Not really. They were just close, and Liam's voice was low but distinct. She's a transaction, a clean one. No strings, nothing personal. The words didn't register at first. They floated past me like smoke. But then someone laughed. Another man raised an eyebrow. And Liam didn't correct them, didn't say my name, didn't defend me, didn't even flinch. Just sipped his drink, like he hadn't just ripped something open inside my chest. I left without saying goodbye. He didn't follow. I don't even think he noticed. Back at the penthouse, I didn't turn on the lights. I walked barefoot across the cold marble, through rooms that had never really belonged to me. The dress fell to the floor in a puddle of satin. I pulled out my suitcase, the same one I'd brought 3 months ago, and started folding everything with mechanical precision. One drawer at a time. One heartbreak per sleeve. When I opened the closet and saw the winter coat he'd bought me, still wrapped in plastic, I laughed. Not bitterly, just empty. Like air escaping from a balloon someone had let go too slowly. At 1:47 a.m., I left the penthouse. No note, no message, no theatrics. Just a girl with a bag and a broken illusion, stepping into a taxi she didn't know how to pay for, whispering an address she wasn't sure still existed. My grandmother's old cabin in Vermont. The place where no one looked for anyone anymore. In the rearview mirror, Manhattan glittered like it always did. Indifferent, indifferent, indifferent. So did he. The thing about heartbreak is that it doesn't scream. Not always. Sometimes it's just a cup of tea that will never taste the same. A pair of footsteps that never linger. A set of promises that were never made aloud, but were broken all the same. I thought I could be useful. That my presence, however silent, might mean something. That the tiny moments of softness I thought I saw in him meant I wasn't just inventory. But Liam Cade had said it himself. Nothing personal. I arrived at the cabin just before dawn. It was smaller than I remembered. The porch creaked. The windows wore coats of frost. I turned on the old boiler, wrapped myself in a wool blanket, and sat in the middle of the empty living room, letting the quiet settle over me like snow. It should have felt like freedom. It didn't. Over the next few weeks, I built a new rhythm. Mornings with coffee and solitude. Afternoons filled with freelance copywriting jobs, medical blogs, SEO fluff, anything that paid. Nights wrapped in silence thick enough to swallow the past. No tea. Outside the door. No footsteps down the hall. Just me. And the echo of what I almost believed. He didn't call. I told myself that meant he respected my choice. That he wasn't the kind of man to chase. But a small, bitter part of me whispered another truth. Maybe he hadn't even noticed I was gone. I tried to forget him. But I kept thinking about the way he loosened his tie at night. The quiet ache in his shoulders. The way his hand lingered on the balcony railing when he thought no one was watching. I hated how I memorized him. I hated how much I missed a man who never really held me. And worst of all, I hated myself for hoping he would come. Even when I knew better, the cabin was exactly as I remembered. Small, weather-worn, stubbornly standing, a slanted porch, shutters that creaked in the wind. Inside, a fireplace, a rickety bookshelf, and the smell of dust and pine. The bed still made from last time Grandma had visited. The same stack of worn blankets folded neatly in the corner. Vermont in late November was colder than I expected. Not a cruel cold, just steady, lingering, like the kind that slips into your bones before you notice it's there. I didn't come here to heal. I came here to vanish. The first few days were quiet in the way grief is quiet. Slept with my clothes on. Ate cereal straight from the box. Worked only enough to cover food and propane. I answered no calls. Deleted old emails. Let the city fall off me like dead skin. Liam never called. Not once. I told myself I was grateful for that. I told myself I didn't want to hear his voice. Didn't want him to try and explain what had already been made brutally clear. She's a transaction, nothing personal. That sentence echoed. In the walls, in my ribs. It filled the room like cold air I couldn't push out. I stopped wearing the coat he'd bought me. Stopped drinking tea altogether. The smell made me nauseous. It was strange, though, how my body still remembered him. I would turn at the sound of footsteps in the snow, only to realize they were my own. I'd catch a glimpse of broad shoulders on a man passing the local market, and my stomach would clench. Every night, I'd check the front porch. Stupid. I hated myself for that. Winter deepened. The snow grew heavier. Time slowed in the mountains. By week 2, I'd started a routine. Mornings, I chopped wood. Afternoons, I worked on my freelance assignments, case studies, copy decks, the occasional email blast for some skincare brand trying too hard. Evenings were the worst. They were when memory crept in. I remembered the sound of Liam's glass clinking against the marble counter, the way he adjusted his cufflinks with one precise motion, the stillness he wore like a second skin. There had been something beautiful about the way he didn't touch me, almost reverent, almost cruel. I used to think that restraint meant respect. Now I wasn't so sure. I wrote a list one night. Things I meant nothing to. The city, my father. Liam Cade, myself. I folded it and slid it into the wood stove without lighting a fire. Some nights, I dreamed of him. He would be standing in the corner of the room, always in that same charcoal coat, shoulders snow-dusted, hands in his pockets. He never moved. Never said anything. Just waited. I hated that the dream felt kinder than reality. Around the 3rd week, I adopted a stray cat, orange, loud, needy in the most annoying way. I named him Vincent. Vincent didn't care about my silence. He demanded food, heat, and attention. He forced me back into my body, little by little. His meows were jarring, real. I needed that. It was Vincent who made me finally light the fireplace again. It was Vincent who made me laugh once, out loud, when he fell off the windowsill in his sleep. It was Vincent who curled up on my chest one night when I woke, gasping from a dream where Liam had walked past me without stopping. The loneliness didn't fade, but it changed shape. It became familiar. I didn't expect to survive this quiet. But I did. In fragments. In half-written journal entries. In songs I didn't skip. In remembering how to breathe without hating myself for it. And yet, every night, just before locking the door, I'd glance out the frost-blurred window. Part of me hoped, not for forgiveness, not even for love. Just a shadow. A shape. Something. But there was only snow. And silence. And the kind of cold that made even ghosts stay home. I thought I had erased him. I thought if I changed my clothes, my name, my rhythms, he would finally stop taking up space inside me. But trauma doesn't work like that. Not when the wound came in the form of soft glances, near kisses, and a man who never touched you but still managed to hold everything you were in a single sentence. Still nothing from him. No calls, no messages, not even a lawyer asking for a formal termination of the agreement. I'd torn up the contract, but legally, he could have come after me. He didn't. Of course he didn't. He let me go the same way he'd held me. Without emotion, without effort, without ever really seeing me. I began to hate the idea of ever hoping he'd come. That someone like Liam Cade, man of steel and spreadsheets, would ever follow a girl like me into the woods. But then, 3 nights into December, I heard something on the porch. A crunch, a shift, a shadow. I stood completely still, hand hovering over the curtain. My heart beat like it hadn't in weeks. It can't be. I opened the door. Nothing, just wind, just snow, just silence. But I swear, for 1 second I smelled tea. I opened the door. He was there, snow on his shoulders, regret in his eyes. It happened the night I finally stopped waiting. I remember because it was the first night I didn't glance at the porch before locking the door. I remember because I had finally decided. Enough. Enough hoping. Enough checking. Enough pretending I was something he might miss. The snow had been falling all day, thick and fast and angry, the kind that blanketed everything with the weight of silence. I was curled up by the fireplace, Vincent purring on my chest, an old record playing softly in the corner. The needle hissed with every rotation. I felt almost normal. Then, 3 knocks. Not loud, not hurried, just there, steady, deliberate. I sat up so fast, Vincent hissed. My heart started before my brain. 3 knocks. At my door. It took me a full minute to stand, another to cross the room. I told myself it could be a neighbor, a delivery, a lost hiker, but no one came out this far. Not at this hour. Not in a snowstorm. I opened the door. And he was there. Liam. Coat dusted with snow. Shoulders hunched, hands bare, red from the cold. He didn't speak, didn't move. Just looked at me the way someone might look at a house they once lived in but no longer recognized. My breath caught. He looked tired. Not his usual clean, sculpted exhaustion, but the real kind. The kind that lives in the eyes. His jaw was tight, like he hadn't eaten. Or maybe hadn't spoken. Or maybe didn't trust himself to say a word without falling apart. I should have slammed the door, but I didn't. I stood there, one hand on the frame, the other shaking faintly at my side. The wind blew between us, carrying 1,000 unsaid things. He didn't apologize, he didn't explain, he didn't ask to come in. He just said, quietly, "I've been looking." I swallowed hard. Why? His answer came like the snow, soft, but impossible to ignore. Because I can't not. I didn't say anything. I closed the door. Gently. I leaned against it, palms flat against the wood, trying to steady my breath. He was here. He had found me. After all this time. After nothing. After silence. He was here. And I didn't know what to do with that. The next morning, I found no footprints in the snow. He was gone, like he'd never been there. But the next night, he came again. 3 knocks. Same hour. Same stillness. Same man. I opened the door. He stood with a thermos this time. Didn't offer it. Just held it. I didn't invite him in. He didn't ask. He just said, "You left." I met his gaze. "You let me." He looked down. Said nothing, and I closed the door again. It became a ritual. Night after night, he returned. Always at the same time. Always silent. Sometimes with tea. Sometimes without. Never demanding. Never forcing. Just there. I started to expect it. I started to wait again. Hating myself for it, but still, there was something about the way he stood. Like he wasn't there to be forgiven. He was there to be seen. On the 7th night, I didn't close the door immediately. I stood in it. He stayed outside. Snow fell between us like a curtain neither of us dared to pull back. His voice was rougher than usual. "You don't have to say anything." I didn't. I couldn't. He turned to leave, but then paused. "I never stopped thinking about you." He walked away. I stood in the open doorway for a long time, letting the cold sting my arms, my face, my chest, reminding myself that I was still alive. That night, I left a blanket on the porch. I told myself it was for the wind. He didn't take it, but the next morning, it was folded. neatly, left on the bench beside a new thermos of tea. Cried, not because it was romantic, but because it was real, because it meant he had sat there in the freezing dark and remembered how I liked it. 2 sugars, no lemon. Because it meant he knew I wouldn't open the door and came anyway. I started writing again. Not blogs, not client work. Real things. Letters I never sent. Sentences I didn't finish. Journal pages that started with "I hate you" and ended with "I miss the sound of your silence." Somewhere in that quiet, I realized something. Liam Cade wasn't trying to fix what he broke. He was waiting. Not for forgiveness. Not even for a second chance. He was just waiting. Because he didn't know what else to do. And for the first time since I left, I didn't feel invisible anymore. You think I broke you? You destroyed me. It was the 12th night. 12 nights of knocking. 12 nights of him standing on the porch, coat wet from snow, face shadowed by something deeper than cold. I hadn't spoken more than 5 sentences to him since he first appeared. I didn't invite him in. I didn't forgive him. I barely looked him in the eyes, but I never locked the door, and I always listened. That night, I found him sitting on the porch steps. No coat, no thermos, no attempt to look composed. Just Liam Cade, shoulders trembling, fingers curled around nothing. He didn't knock, didn't stand, didn't speak until I did. You'll freeze out here. His head lifted slowly. There was no mask tonight. No CEO. No man of power. Just a voice, raw and small. Maybe I deserved to. I stepped out onto the porch, blanket in hand. I didn't offer it. I didn't trust myself not to wrap it around both of us and collapse. Why are you here, Liam? He stared at the snow-covered trees. Not me, because I can't undo what I said. Then why come at all? Because I remember your silence, and now I understand it. I sat beside him, close, but not touching. You remember my silence? He nodded once. The first night you came to the penthouse. You didn't cry. You didn't beg. You just sat there like you'd already vanished. I remember wondering how a person could look so invisible while still breathing. His voice cracked. Now, I know. I see it every time I look in a mirror. I turned away. The truth of that hurt more than the insult had. You called me a transaction. He flinched. I know. You didn't even deny it. I didn't know how. There was snow on his lashes, not frost. Tears. I said it because I was scared, he whispered. Because I felt too much, and I didn't understand it. I didn't want to be seen. Not really. And you? You saw everything. So you pushed me away. I crushed you. He looked down at his hands. And then I waited. Because I didn't know what else to do with the wreckage I caused. We sat in silence. But it wasn't the same silence we'd lived in for months. This one hummed, ached, carried the weight of everything unsaid between us. Do you know what hurt the most? I said quietly. He turned toward me. It wasn't the insult. It wasn't being left at that event. It wasn't even that you didn't come after me. Then what? It was that I mattered so little. You didn't think it would break me. He closed his eyes. You didn't matter little. You mattered too much. That's why I couldn't say anything. You still didn't. I'm saying it now. His voice was sharp, desperate. You changed me, Haley. You cracked something open in me, and I didn't know how to live with it. I tried to keep you like I kept everything else, neatly packaged, controlled, unthreatening. But you were never that. You were real. He looked at me, and there was no distance in his gaze this time. No armor. Just a man stripped down to nothing but regret. You think I broke you? You destroyed me. In the best, most terrifying way. I stared at him. And for the first time, I believed him. Because no man looked that undone unless the damage was mutual. So why didn't you say something? I whispered. Because I thought you deserved better than a man who couldn't say I love you until you were already gone. The world stopped. Just for a second. No wind, no breath, only that sentence. I love you. I didn't cry. I should have. But the truth of it settled over me like snowfall, soft, steady, impossible to stop. I'm not asking for anything, he said, after a moment. Not forgiveness, not a second chance. I just wanted you to know. I saw you. I always saw you. And I'm sorry I didn't know what to do with someone who made me feel human. I stood up slowly. He didn't follow, didn't plead, didn't look away. I opened the door. Paused. You're still cold, I said. He blinked. I threw the blanket toward him. He caught it clumsily. For the first time, I smiled. Don't die on my porch, Liam. I just shoveled it yesterday. He gave a low, choked laugh, like he hadn't made a sound like that in years, like it hurt to remember how. I closed the door behind me, but not all the way. Not locked. Not yet. Don't talk. Just touch me. The storm hit without warning. One moment the night was quiet. The next, wind roared through the trees like something feral. Snow slammed sideways against the cabin windows. The power blinked twice. Then died. Darkness wrapped around everything. The fire was down to a flicker. Vincent hissed and darted under the couch. My phone had no service, no heat, no light, only silence, and the distant hope that the man who'd been standing on my porch every night might be somewhere nearby. I moved on instinct, found the flashlight, lit 3 candles, and fed the fire what little kindling I had left. Then, 3 knocks. I didn't hesitate. I yanked the door open. He was there, soaked, breathless, snow clinging to his hair, his lashes, the hem of his coat. His jaw clenched, arms wrapped around himself. Jesus, I muttered. You'll freeze. He said nothing. He didn't need to. This time I stepped aside. Come in. He didn't say thank you. He didn't say anything. He stepped into the light of the candles, melting snow pooling at his boots. His hands shook as he pulled off his coat. Not from cold, from restraint. I closed the door behind him, turned to speak, but he was already looking at me like he might fall apart. I couldn't stay away, he said. His voice was rough, almost hoarse. I tried. I told myself to give you space. I stood out there every night just to prove I could let you breathe. He took a shaky step forward. But I'm still a selfish bastard, because I kept hoping you'd open the door. I stepped toward him, 2 feet between us. Why tonight? Because if I didn't come in now, I was never going to. The wind howled outside. Inside, everything else fell silent. Our eyes met, and something inside both of us cracked. Not gently, not sweetly, but violently. Finally, I closed the distance. He caught me in his arms like he'd been waiting to do it since the day I left. His mouth crashed into mine. No hesitation, no question. Just heat. Just need. Just months of longing condensed into a kiss that stole every coherent thought from my head. I gasped against him. He pulled me tighter. His hands gripped my waist, slid up my back, tangled in my hair. Mine clutched his shoulders, his shirt, anything I could hold. The taste of him, cold, wild, desperate, burned through me. We broke apart, only for breath. Don't talk, I whispered. Just touch me. He didn't need more than that. We stumbled toward the fireplace. Clothes fell away, fast, frantic, forgotten. He lifted me like I weighed nothing and laid me on the rug, the flickering fire painting gold across his skin. I'd never seen him like this. Ungoverned. Eyes blown wide with hunger, chest rising in ragged, broken rhythm. Every touch was possessive, reverent, like he was relearning me, memorizing every gasp, every tremble, every curve his hands found. He kissed down my neck, over my collarbone, across the space, just above my heart. "You're mine," he whispered, "but only if you say so." "I never stop being yours," I breathed. Then we stopped talking. The air between us sparked like live wire. Every motion was raw, gripping, grinding, shuddering. Hands on skin, breath on breath, the slick heat of his mouth tracing fire down my body. I arched into him, nails digging into his back as he moved like a man starved. I wasn't prepared for how much it would feel like coming home. Not just to him. To myself. To every part of me I'd locked away. He slowed down only once, when our eyes locked just before he pressed fully into me. That moment, suspended, trembling, eternal. Then he moved, and I shattered. It wasn't sweet. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate, addictive, freeing. It was the sound of skin meeting skin, the low groan in his throat as he whispered my name like a confession, the way our bodies refused to separate even between waves of release. It was the kind of collision that doesn't leave bruises. It leaves meaning. Later, tangled in the throw, blanket in front of the fire, our skin still slick, breath still unsteady, he spoke again. Only one word. "Stay." I turned to him, fingers tracing the scar beneath his collarbone I'd never asked about. I already did. The storm raged on outside, but inside, everything was finally quiet, not empty, just still. We were never perfect, but we were real. The storm lasted 3 days. Power stayed out. Phone signal stayed dead. Outside, snow fell in endless spirals, erasing every path back to anything that felt predictable. Inside, we didn't talk much. We didn't need to. There was something sacred about the quiet that followed after. Not the silence we used to share. The cold, unfinished, avoidant kind, but a silence that felt lived in, earned. The morning after was the hardest. Waking up tangled in Liam's arms, my cheek pressed against the heat of his chest, the fire down to embers. Everything felt too good, too unreal. His fingers were laced with mine. I could feel the rise and fall of his breath, slow and steady, as if sleep had finally found him after months of resistance. I didn't want to move. Not just because it was warm. Because I was afraid he'd wake up and return to the version of him I used to know, the one who wouldn't meet my eyes. But he didn't. When I finally stirred, he looked at me without blinking, and he said quietly, like it almost hurt, "You're real." We shared coffee that morning, sitting on the floor, wrapped in mismatched blankets. He brewed it too strong. I didn't complain. I caught him watching me more than once. Not with hunger, with awe. Like he couldn't believe I was still here. We didn't talk about the past that first day. Instead, we read from the same book, cooked grilled cheese sandwiches with a camping stove, played a record and argued over which decade had the best music. He laughed once, that soft, broken laugh again. It cracked something open in me. That night we didn't rush. He kissed me like a question, touched me like an answer, and when we collapsed together again, he didn't let go. On the second day, I asked, "Why didn't you ever sleep?" He hesitated, fingers tracing circles over the inside of my wrist. "I used to." Before me? Before my father. That stopped me. He'd never talked about his family, not once. What happened? He didn't meet my eyes. He ran the company like a machine. Every quarter had to be stronger than the last. People weren't people. They were assets. If something didn't serve a purpose, he cut it out. He paused. Including my mother. You mean he divorced her, replaced her, tried to do the same with me? He looked at me then. Raw. Uneasy. I spent 20 years being trained to feel nothing, to want nothing. Love was inefficient. I swallowed the lump in my throat. So when you started feeling something, you panicked. He gave a hollow smile. I tried to keep you in the only way I knew. Quiet, contained, controlled, like a contract, like a coward. We sat in silence. This time I broke it. You know what's funny? What? I never wanted to belong to you. I know, but now I do. His hand found mine again, squeezed, hard. Then, let me earn it, he said. Not with silence, not with tea outside your door, with everything I was too afraid to give you before. That night, we fell asleep pressed together, no space left between our bodies. The wind still howled, but inside, there was peace. On the third day, the sun came out. The snow outside was blinding, untouched. Liam stepped out with me, boots crunching, against the ice. The world was silent in that way, only snow can make it. Cleansing, full of possibility. He turned to me. I'm not leaving unless you ask me to. I won't. He exhaled. Then tell me what you need. I looked out at the horizon, and I said simply, stay, but not as a shadow. He nodded. Then I'll stay, as a man, for you. We didn't promise forever. We didn't need to. We promised today. And for the first time in a long, long time, that was enough. He waited. Every night. But tonight I opened the door. The snow had stopped falling. The world outside the cabin was still blanketed in white, but now it glowed. Sunlight hitting the ice in such a way that the air itself seemed lit from within. Everything looked clean, fresh, as if the earth had decided to start over. Inside, it was quiet. Not the kind of quiet I used to fear. The lonely, echoing kind that reminded me of every room Liam had ever left without looking back. This was different. This quiet had breath in it. I stood by the window, holding a mug of too hot coffee between my palms, watching Liam chop wood in the snow-covered yard. His coat was too thin, his movements too practiced, like he'd been doing it for years, even though I knew he hadn't. This was not the life he was built for, not the world he'd ruled, but he looked right in it. Maybe, for the first time, when he came back in, flushed and snow-dusted, he grinned at me. Actually grinned. You're watching me work? You must be bored. You're chopping wrong, I said, smirking. Excuse me? The axe angle's all off. Right. The doctor turned lumberjack says so. I've got range. He set the axe down, pulled off his gloves. I've noticed. We didn't need the fire that morning, but he lit one anyway. Habit now. Ritual. I sat across from him on the rug, our knees touching, sharing the same blanket. Vincent, ever the tyrant, claimed the middle. Liam tried to pet him and got scratched. Again, he still hates me. He's protective. Of you. Of what I've become around you. That shut him up. Softened him. He reached for my hand. What do we do now? He asked. It was the first time he let himself ask a question without knowing the answer. We decide. Together. Together. He nodded. Looked down at our hands. I'm still figuring out how to love out loud, Haley. Still unlearning. Everything I was taught. I know. And I'll mess up. I will too. But I'll never be silent with you again. You don't have to say much. Just stay. We sat like that for a long time, firelight on skin, breath steady, nothing breaking, nothing frozen. Around noon, we walked through the snow into town, slow steps, shared gloves. No agenda. People stared. Not rudely, just curiously. Liam Cade wasn't exactly small-town furniture. He didn't flinch, didn't hide. When someone called my name at the general store, he didn't tense or turn away. He squeezed my hand. We picked up groceries, a new shovel, batteries for the radio. Normal things. It felt unnatural at first, then easy, then right. That evening, the power came back. The lights blinked on. We didn't use them. We kept the candles burning, sat in the cabin as if nothing had changed, except everything had. When we went to bed, he pulled me into his chest like it was instinct, like it was his place, like I was his home. And maybe I was. I woke in the middle of the night, not from a dream, not from fear, just awake. I looked at the door, the same one I used to stare at night after night, waiting for the impossible to knock. Now it stood still, closed, but not locked. Liam stirred, beside me. You okay? He murmured, voice rough with sleep. Yeah. Nightmare? No. I turned to face him, just remembering what it felt like to wait. He pulled me closer. I waited too. I know. We lay there in the dark, listening to wind through the trees, and I realized something. He hadn't just waited on my porch. He'd waited inside himself. For years, waited to feel, to break, to rebuild. I kissed him then, softly, not like a collision, like a promise, like a door opening. What are you thinking? He asked when we pulled apart. That I want to stay. Here? With you. Even after the snow melts? Especially after. He smiled. That quiet, rare smile that had nothing to do with charm and everything to do with truth. Then stay, he whispered. Not because you have to, because you want to. I do. Mine? He asked. Yours, I said. Mine. Ours. Outside, the wind softened. Inside, two people, once broken, once silenced, breathed in sync. Not perfectly, but honestly. Because love didn't come through grand gestures or loud declarations. It came through showing up, every night, even when no one answered. This time I opened the door, and he walked in. To stay. If this story touched something in you, if it made you feel seen, or reminded you of what it means to wait, to want, to finally be chosen, then go ahead and like this video. And if you'd like more stories that linger long after the last line, subscribe to the channel. There's more where this came from.